Hello and welcome to this episode of the Keto Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Tai. And as I know you are, if you're a listener, you are used to hearing me say every single week, I'm happy to be here with you again today. And I am. This is exciting. Today is a milestone for this podcast. This is actually episode number 100 that I am recording right now. You may be listening to this in just an audio version, or you may be watching this on YouTube, because I am now recording as many of these as I can and get them onto my YouTube channel. I've heard from a lot of you guys that you really like to watch YouTube instead of just listening on podcast. So it's a little bit kind of difficult for me because I'm just sitting here in front of my computer and talking to you. I try to pretend like you're right there and I'm just talking to you, but it's a little bit weird. It's hard for me to get used to. And then it's kind of like, then I start thinking like, oh, wow, people are going to be watching this and do I look okay? Am I making eye contact? Am I paying attention to what I'm doing? And then I've always got notes for what I want to talk about. And I'm like, am I looking too much at my notes? And so anyway, hopefully this all goes really well and we get this episode out. I have some interviews that I was going to share with you in the coming weeks, but I decided for this episode number 100, I wanted it to be a solo-sode. So I'm just going to be on here talking to you about some things. I've had some questions coming in, some topics coming up, and I thought I would just go ahead and address those today in today's episode. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about ketones, like chasing ketones. So chasing the number that is on that glucometer, if you have a glucometer or a blood ketone meter. We're going to talk about insulin and why keeping insulin low is really key, in my opinion anyway, not just in ketosis, but it's really key in health and longevity in general. We're going to talk about fasting and if that's necessary. We're going to talk about your willpower and how to set up your day for success. So these are some things that have been, that people have sent to me, questions, things that have come in, or maybe not specific questions, but things that I kind of get often. So I'm going to address those since we get those in a lot. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is chasing ketones. So when I say chasing ketones, like what do I even mean by that? Well, what I mean is, if you're on social media and which I think probably all of us are, right? Or the majority of us, and you are in some of these groups for ketosis or low carb living, or I guess specifically ketosis. So the groups that are focused on being in ketosis, the keto groups, many of them, you will see people constantly posting their readings that they get on their Keto Mojo or whatever device that they're using to register or to measure their ketones, right? Not too many people use the breath analyzed ones that I see. It seems like it's always blood, which is fine. That's the gold standard, really. But you see people posting, and so it'll be like, oh, I'm 2.8 millimole today, or, oh, well, I'm 3.6, or I got a 5.0 or whatever. And it's like, the higher, the like chasing these numbers, right? So like somehow you're a better ketoer if you have more ketones on that meter. So I've talked about this a little bit before and kind of my take on that, but I have since the last time I've discussed it, I have heard numerous other experts talking about it. And I have seen research papers and studies that have come out talking about this very subject. And the thing that I have always said about it is, for myself personally, I noticed when I first started keto 2.5, 3 years ago, that most of my numbers, I was registering quite high all the time. And that since I feel like what has happened, because things are not really been different for me, but my numbers have come down, even though I'm eating the same, or, I'm having the same, like there's not been any major changes in myself, but yet I've seen the numbers coming down, but I've not seen like brain fog and, weight hasn't been creeping on, those types of things that would be indicators to me that perhaps I'm not doing as well as I should be. But I've seen that number come down significantly. And I generally am somewhere between 0.5 and like 1. Like that's kind of usually where I hover. I get a lot of 0.8s when I measure. And so if I was putting those numbers up against some of these people in these Facebook groups that are talking about it, they would probably think, well, you're just not doing it right. You're not ketoing hard enough. Like, you need to try harder. You need to get bigger numbers. And I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that's true. I have talked about this numerous times, but now the studies, there are more and more studies that are backing that up, and that our bodies are built to be very efficient as they can be in like every aspect, right? So there's a lot of processes that don't run efficiently, that are very inefficient. And our bodies are constantly working to kind of shore those things up. And one of those processes is producing ketones. So if we're using ketones as our fuel source, then our body, if we are fat adapted and we've been using ketones as our fuel source, and we pretty much, we kind of all have like the same type of routine, right? Like every day I get up and do pretty much the same basic routine every day. I am physically active about the same amount every day or every week. Pretty much my life is pretty normal. Like there's pretty much normal activity going on. So my body knows approximately how many ketones it needs to actually create. Like my liver is going to create these ketones out of what I'm bringing in and as my fuel source. And so it is only going to produce what it thinks that I need to have to get myself through the day, to be able to run as efficiently as possible. It has all these other jobs to do, right? 500 different things that my liver's doing. So it's not going to spend additional time that doesn't need to be spent producing additional ketones that I'm not going to be using. So I think as you get better and better and better at using ketones, and your body gets better and better and better at knowing what you need, you're not going to produce excess ketones, which, by the way, is what you are detecting when you do a blood reading, right? These are not the ketones that you are currently using for fuel. This is just what's circulating in your blood. So if it's circulating in your blood, you're not currently using it, right? So I think it's just important to, if you're one of those people that see all of these posts on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and every day you're checking your ketones and you're obsessing over this and you're thinking, man, this girl is at 3 millimole all the time, and all I can seem to get is I'm eking out 0.8 millimole every day. If you feel good and you're hitting your goals and your brain fog's gone and you got all this pep in your step and you're getting through your day and everything's great, don't worry about it. Then you're doing fine. Then 0.8 is what you need. That is what your body has gotten good at. It's producing what you need. You've got plenty of energy. Brain fog's gone. Your body is utilizing the ketones. You're fine. Don't worry about the person that's got 0.3. Now, does that mean the person that has 0.3 is not good at utilizing ketones? I don't know. Maybe they're bringing in so much excess that their body's making tons and they're actually using, like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know why they have a lot. Maybe it is that they are newer to this lifestyle, or that their body is just not quite as good at producing exactly what it needs yet. I don't know. That's a possibility. So just wanted to put that out there and wanted to help you kind of put your mind to ease and just tell you, stop chasing the numbers on the Keto Mojo or whatever ketone reader you've got. Don't worry about the numbers so much. Just worry about how you're feeling and how things are working for you, and not so much about what that number says on the keto meter. I would be much more interested, if I were you, in seeing what your blood glucose is in response to when you're eating. That is the better indicator of how your body is functioning and how it's working with what you're eating, not so much what your ketone reading is. Much more important to see what your blood glucose does in response to what you're eating. Okay, so this brings me to, perfect segue. So we're talking about blood glucose. This brings me to keeping insulin low. So a lot of times when we're talking about keto, we think that we chase that number because we think that's actually what's the most important thing, right? We want this great ketone reading. We need lots of ketones, and that's what tells us that we're doing this right. And we're hit some, awesome goal that we've set for ourselves. The more ketones we produce, the better. And I would like to suggest to you that that's actually not true. I think it is the lower we can keep our insulin, the better. So high insulin, or, keeping insulin high throughout the day, or stoked throughout the day. So maybe not even high, but just always having insulin present. That's a much bigger indicator of problems, right? Of chronic issues and early death, having things break down, insulin resistance. So, which, is going to lead obviously to diabetes down the road, and diabetes leads to issues like heart disease. And, we've got cancer creeping in, like those types of issues. Those are metabolic issues. And, insulin is having chronically elevated levels of insulin is a good indicator that you're going to have one or a myriad of those types of issues. So I think when you're looking at ketosis, or not even looking at ketosis, maybe you're not even 100% sure you even care about being in ketosis. That's fine. I think the more important thing is that everybody should be concerned about, and what keto does such a good job at, is keeping our insulin low. You can't be in ketosis and have elevated levels of insulin. So it's not that you won't have elevated levels of insulin from time to time, but you cannot have chronically elevated levels of insulin. There's so many hormones at play here that are going to, you've got glucagon and cortisol, and you've got these counter-regulatory hormones to insulin. And when those hormones are elevated all the time, you're not going to be able to produce ketones. So this also kind of is, and I've talked about this in the past too, but this might be something that if you are a person that has kind of started ketosis and you're frustrated because you're just like, man, I just can't seem to, I barely get anything on the meter. Most of the time I just get a low reading. I can't even seem to register any ketones. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm eating all the fat. I'm cutting out my carbs. That is probably an indicator to you that you have insulin resistance. You have elevated or chronically elevated levels of insulin throughout the day. Or that or that you have some issues regulating some of these other hormones like glucagon or cortisol. So cortisol, obviously we all think of stress when we think of cortisol, right? And so if you're dealing with a lot of stress or not getting sleep or those types of things, that's going to keep cortisol elevated as well. And we're going to have issues with insulin. I just was thinking something I wanted to make sure that I said to you, and it just right out of my brain. This is why I write notes, and even still, sometimes I forget what I wanted to say to you. But I guess just what I'm trying to say is we really need to be focused on insulin. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So one of the ways that we can help with insulin regulation, or one of the things that you may be experiencing, if you're experiencing the issues of not being able to get into ketosis and you're frustrated because you can't seem to produce ketones, one thing that people don't realize is that insulin is actually released anytime that we are ready to eat. So you smell food, see food, start thinking about food, your body automatically is going to produce insulin in response to that. It's expecting to get food, and it's expecting blood glucose to go up. And so insulin production already starts, and we're ready for it. Now, that insulin production is going to ramp up based on what you eat, because when that happens, from your reaction in your brain, remember we talked about before on here, digestion starts in your brain. So when that happens, your body doesn't know. I mean, the insulin is being released, right? It doesn't know if you're going to have carbs coming in, or you're going to have just fat coming in, or you're going to have protein coming in. It doesn't know, right? So this is just like the base line insulin that your body's going to produce. And that's going to vary from person to person, because that's very much going to depend on your metabolic health and what your body is used to you bringing in. So if you're constantly bombarding your body with carbs and you've already got some level of insulin resistance, then your body is probably pumping out way more insulin than it needs to pump out before you even start eating, because it's anticipating that what you typically eat and what's going to be coming in, that it's, remember, your body it figures these things out, right? And it's not going to waste time that it doesn't need to waste. But if it knows that, hey, our blood glucose it's going to shoot through the roof. She just smelled some food. Here it comes. We got bagels and, cinnamon rolls and whatever, orange juice. Here comes breakfast. Then that's what it's going to do all the time. That's you have to retrain your body to be like, oh no, wait a minute. She did that. We don't need that much insulin released anymore because she's not eating that way anymore. So you could have those types of things going on. Keep in mind that, that every time you eat, though, insulin is released, and that is going to stay in your system about 2 hours on average. So just think about that. So think about when we've been told in the past, you need to eat 6 small meals a day, right? How many of you have heard that? I tried my very best to do that, right? For years, I tried my very best to do that. Could not figure out why I couldn't lose weight and why things were so difficult, and all the stuff that comes with that, right? Well, my insulin levels were elevated practically 24/7, unless I was sleeping and physically unable to be eating while I was sleeping. My insulin was elevated all the time because I was just eating little bits all day long. So all day long I was stoking it, not to mention the fact that I was eating a lot of carbohydrates because that's what I thought was healthy, right? Healthy whole grains and fruits and, all this kind of stuff. As long as it was low fat, it was healthy, right? So that's a whole nother, we're not even going to go down that road. But my point is that you need to really be focused on keeping insulin low. So what that may mean is that you're going to eat breakfast if you want to have breakfast, and you eat a good amount of fat and protein, and then you wait for 6 hours. I don't know. I'm up at 5:45, 6 o'clock every morning getting the kids breakfast. I usually don't want to eat at that time, but let's say I want to eat an hour early or later. Let's say I eat at 7 o'clock. So then lunchtime, right, is noon, 1, something like that. So then I wouldn't eat again for another 5 to 6 hours. Well, that's perfect, because then insulin's gone. It's been down for a long time. I don't have to worry. It's not been, I'm not stoking my insulin all day long. And then come about lunch. Let's say I have lunch, and then let's say that's at 1 o'clock. So what's that? I went 5 hours, or 12 o'clock, let's say. So 5 hours, eat at 12. And then let's say dinner's at 6. Now I went another 6 hours, and then I stop eating at 6 o'clock and then reset the next morning. So that's if you're eating 3 meals a day. Now imagine, in contrast to that, I eat at 7. And then I want a mid-morning snack at 10. Well, shoot, my insulin has just barely been out of circulation, and I've stoked it again. And then, here comes noon. I want to eat again. Insulin never even went down. I had it pumping through the whole time. And now noon, and then, now I need an afternoon pick-me-up, right? We got that afternoon slump, 2 to 2:30. So now I'm having a little snack at 2 to 2:30. Maybe I'm having my chocolate and some mocha latte from wherever or whatever. I don't know. I drink black coffee, so I'm not very up on all that stuff. But then I have that. Now I've stoked it again. Never even had time to come down from the last time I ate. And now I drive home, and now I have dinner. And maybe there was a half hour of time between the last time that, my body saw some insulin, and now it's coming back again because I've just eaten again. So you can see how this can be a problem, right? And insulin is known as the fat storage hormone. So whatever you're not using of what you're bringing in at that time, your body is going to store it. That is what insulin does. It's going to find a place to put that. And unfortunately for most of us, that means that it is going to find make not vacant fat cells, but it's going to make new areas to store these triglycerides, this fat. So watch the insulin. I want to make sure that I keep kind of helping you guys to understand that is much more important really than producing ketones and that type of thing, which I think is great if that's your goal. And ketones are wonderful. They're wonderful. But I don't want us to get so wrapped up in producing ketones that we forget about the whole insulin part, and then can't figure out why we either can't get into ketosis or we're in ketosis, but we're not getting the results that we want. So I just want to make sure we're kind of thinking about that. Okay. Also, wanted to talk about fasting. And I get a lot of questions about, is fasting necessary? I'm new to keto and I just don't feel like fasting. And I feel like I'm hungry. I want to eat, but I feel like I'm failing because I'm not skipping meals. And absolutely, fasting is not necessary. There are no rules that say to be in ketosis or to be a good ketoer, you need to fast. Now, it is another one of those things that's talked about a lot on social media. And I don't think there's anything wrong with fasting. And if that works for you and you like that, I think that's great. And for myself and for a lot of clients, I do recommend that they fast 1 to 2 days, probably 1 to 2 days a month, or every other week type thing, where you kind of do like a reset, give your body a break, if that feels good to you. But I think, again, when we're talking about what is most important, what is going to perhaps give you the most bang for your buck, I don't think it's necessarily fasting as much as it is time restricted eating. So you could say, well, that's just somatics, right? It's the same thing. I mean, you're fasting, time restricted eating. I mean, what's the difference? It just means there's certain times you're not eating. The difference is fasting. If you're talking about fasting, you're really focused on not eating or skipping meals, right? Like you just think to yourself, well, I'm going to fast breakfast. So I won't eat breakfast. Or I'm going to fast dinner. I won't eat dinner. Or you think about fasting, like maybe you think, well, today I want to make sure I fast 16 hours, or I'm going to fast 20 hours. And I would like to just suggest that maybe you think of it more as time restricted eating windows. So instead of thinking like, well, I'm not going to eat breakfast, maybe you think more about, if you're hungry for breakfast and you want to eat, fine, eat. That, do that. Don't deny your body because you're like, no, I'm going to fast. I'm fasting. Eat your breakfast, but maybe keep when you're eating in a more time restricted window. Why? Many benefits to this, but one of them is we just talked about insulin production, right? So if you eat in a time restricted window, maybe you eat in a 4-hour window or a 6-hour window. Those are kind of popular time restricted eating windows. Maybe you eat in that window every day and you get all of your calories in that time period, and then you don't eat any other time. So instead of focusing on what you're not doing and the meals that you're not eating, which is what fasting indicates, you're instead saying, no, I'm eating all those meals. I'm just eating them in this window of time. So maybe you have breakfast at 10 and then you are finishing up with your day 6 hours later at 4. So that's it. Like that's your window that you're eating. So your dinner would be at 4, maybe breakfast is at 10, that type of thing. And again, if that works for you, some people have a really difficult time getting enough calories in that period of time. Because if you're doing time restricted eating or fasting or anything else, I know I've talked about this before, but I definitely want to make sure that I'm really dialing this in. If you are having a difficult time getting in the amount of calories your body needs to be able to function, your basal metabolic rate. Remember, we've talked about this before. I really, really talk about this, teach you exactly how to figure out what your BMR is in my keto masterclass. So run over to my website, grab that class if you haven't taken that yet and you're interested in learning more about this. But it's very important to know what your basal metabolic rate is. You need to know how many calories a day you actually need to be eating. Because if you are fasting or eating in a time restricted window and you are not able to get in those calories day after day after day, guess what happens? You're resetting your metabolic how do I want to say this? The metabolic clock isn't really right. Your rate, you're resetting your metabolic rate. And if you do that day after day after day, now your new metabolic rate is going to be whatever the deficiency is that you're giving your body every day. Now, can you give your body a deficiency from time to time? Sure, that's fine. You lose weight that way. But what happens is we get so caught up on the fact that you can lose weight that way that we say, oh, well, if doing it this much is good, then doing it this much be better. And so we go from, maybe we have a day or 2 or 3 a month of fasting, or we fast at different intervals throughout the week, or we do time restricted eating throughout the week. And so maybe one day we have 2,200 calories and another day we have 1,200 calories. And then another day we have no calories. And then another day we have 2,600 calories, whatever. We forget that that's the way we should be doing it. And we start thinking, well, I'm losing weight. I'm just going to, pedal to the metal, man. So I'm just going to restrict. And while you're doing that, your body, who is what do I keep trying to tell you guys? Very smart and very efficient, starts going, wait a minute, we're not getting that many calories day in, day out. It's not just a sporadic thing anymore. I think she's starving because it's been like a week now and we're still not getting good calories. And guess what it starts to do? Dial back the amount of energy that it needs. So it will start taking away from processes in your body that are not essential to life, and will start dialing back your metabolic rate and keeping, slowing things down so that the amount of energy that you're giving it will now be sufficient for it to do the processes it needs to do. That makes sense. It'll also start storing fat as much as possible to make sure that you can stay alive. And when you do start eating normal, like when you do say, oh, okay, I've reached my goal weight, I'm good now, I can't stick with this anymore, I need to actually start eating food, then you're going to start packing on the pounds, and you're going to start packing them on faster than ever, because now your body has said, wait a minute, we've got food now. Wasn't that long ago, she was starving. Let's start storing this as fat. And you will start packing on fat quicker than you ever have in the past, because now your body has a reason to store it. All right. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is, I've talked about this a little bit in the past before, but I recently had some questions around this subject, and recently heard some other people talking about it. And so it kind of just reignited the fact that I wanted to make sure to share this with you guys. And that is willpower. So many of us hear and we think that you can exercise your willpower and make it stronger, much like you'd exercise a muscle, right? We've all heard that. Like, you just have to keep working on it, keep building it, and you'll get more and more willpower. You'll get better and better and better at it. And I want to tell you that is baloney. Willpower is finite. That this is proven. Like, there's absolutely no debate to this. Anybody that tells you that you can increase your willpower if you just work harder on it, absolutely does not understand the science behind it at all. Willpower is finite. This is why one of the reasons that I try to encourage clients and you as listeners to not try to change everything at one time, but to implement things, a few things maybe at a time, or per day or per week, and add those things into your routine and just make them part of your routine. The reason why is because if you are trying to do too many things at once, you don't have enough willpower for that. And you'll run out and you'll just be like, I can't do any of it. It'll be too overwhelming. The other thing is that if you decide that you're going to do certain things and you keep a journal on them, or you write them down, or you have a list, or whatever whatever the mechanism is for you, if you already have those decisions made and all you have to do is do it, you don't have to think about it, then that saves your willpower because you have a finite amount of it. Okay, great example. Let me try to put it this way. Are you a person who sets your alarm and you snooze 4 times before you get up? So you set the alarm, but you know that you're going to hit that snooze. Every time that snooze button goes off, you're making a decision. You're using your willpower, this finite amount of willpower that you have. Because every time, I know because I used to do this, every time that alarm goes off, even though you've said to yourself, I'm going to set this alarm early because I know I'm going to hit the snooze button and I'm going to have extra time to do that, to hit the snooze button. Every time that snooze button goes off, before you hit it, you're actually thinking in your brain, what time is it? Okay, it's 5:45. Okay, if I get up if I hit the snooze button, it's going to be 8 minutes. I have 8 more minutes and I can still get everything done. Okay, snooze. And you go back to sleep. Get you up 8 minutes later. Then you're thinking, okay, what time is it? Okay, well, now if I just don't do that, then I'll have time. Okay, snooze. Goes off 8 minutes later. And you're thinking, okay, shoot, man, I really should get up. But you know what? I really don't have to wash my hair. I have dry shampoo. I'll just spray some dry shampoo in it. It'll be fine. Snooze. Goes off again. You're thinking, okay, all right, I don't really have to take the dog for a walk, I guess. I mean, I could just take a dog for a walk later, right? Like, I don't really have to do it right now. You hit the snooze again. Every single time that happened, you're using your willpower because it's decision making. You're trying to decide, do I need, what do I need? How do I need to do this? Like, do I need to get up? Can I just take care of these things later? Can I push this off a little bit? So you're making these decisions when what you should have done was just don't use any willpower. You don't have to use willpower to get up, right? You just say, the alarm goes off, I get up. That's when I have to get up. So you just get up. So the willpower is the internal fight with yourself of, am I going to will myself to do this? Or am I going to lose at this? Am I going to just be like, oh, I just didn't have I tried to use my willpower to get up, but I just didn't want to. I just hit the snooze 4 times. So you've already made all those decisions before you've even gotten out of bed. So then you get out of bed and then you're like, oh, I don't even know what I want to eat. Like, there's just nothing to eat. I don't really want to cook eggs. Like, it's just going to take so long. And now I've hit the snooze 4 times and I don't really have time to cook eggs. And I don't know, maybe I could put bacon in the microwave real fast. I don't know. Oh, well, my husband's got some toast or some bread over there. Maybe I'll just toast the bread. And I mean, it's not that bad, right? I'll put a bunch of butter on it and it'll be fine. And then, so now you've made all these other decisions and you've further kind of chunked down your willpower. So to help you avoid doing that, what you do is you set your alarm, you're going to get up. You don't need any willpower. That is a decision that you've already made, right? So you're like, 5:45 comes, that alarm goes off, I'm up, I'm getting up. There's no more decisions to be made there. Then when you get up in the morning, if you have to do it ahead of time, do it. Cook yourself some scrambled eggs, put them in a container in the fridge. They heat up really easily. Or make yourself some hard-boiled eggs, stick those in the refrigerator. Pre-cook bacon, put bacon in the refrigerator. These are all decisions that you can make before you get into that day. So you don't even have to make those decisions. So the alarm goes off, you get up, you go into the kitchen, you've got hard-boiled eggs in the refrigerator and bacon, and you are going to take that to work with you. And when you get to work, you're going to heat up your bacon and you're going to eat that and you're going to have your hard-boiled egg. No decision about, do I stop at the McDonald's? Do I not? Then when you're in McDonald's, you're like, well, I know I can get a platter with just eggs and bacon, but oh my gosh, that biscuit looks so good. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal to have one biscuit, right? It's not. So again, it's this willpower thing. So by the time you get to the office party that evening, and they've got a cheese tray, like they've got this great looking charcuterie board that you're like, ooh, that sounds so yummy. And so maybe a glass of wine, no big deal. By the time you get there and you had that in your mind that that's what you were going to do, your willpower shot. So when they bring out the little tray of cookies, it just looks so good. And you have no willpower left because you've used it to make all these decisions throughout the day that were decisions you could have already had made, right? Like, you're like, I just get up at this time. This is what I eat for breakfast. This is what, like, you don't have to make those decisions every day. So then when you get to the office party after work on the, I don't know, maybe your office does a Wednesday happy hour. When you get to that Wednesday happy hour, you have the willpower to see one of your favorite cookies on that tray and be like, nope, not going to do it. Like I've not made that, you're not thinking this way, but your brain has not made that many decisions because you just know what you're going to do every day. And so now you have the willpower because you've not used it throughout the day. You've not had this decision fatigue all day long. So when you see that cookie, you can be like, nope, that is not going to serve me well. I know how that's going to make me feel. I don't want that. Man, I'm down 20 pounds. I'm going to keep going on this. I feel so good right now. Not going to do it. Done. And maybe you've already made the decision that for you, alcohol's out. So you're going to have a glass of ice water. Or maybe for you, you've decided that you'll allow yourself one glass of wine or one spirit, whatever, maybe a bourbon, whatever. And so you've already made that decision. So when you come to these things, again, no decision fatigue. You might see something that, you know, a Shirley Temple that you're like, wow, I used to drink those all the time. And that, or for me, an Amaretto Sour. And you're like, oh, that sounds so yummy. But you already know what you're going to have because you've already had this discussion for yourself. You've already made those decisions. So again, you don't even have to tap into willpower. Then your willpower is there to use in these situations where you really need to be able to use it. Or if another example would be if it's difficult for you to get to the gym or to work out, just set it in your calendar. It's just something that's set. So again, you don't have to use your willpower to make yourself go work out, to like grunt through it. It's like, no, it's in my calendar. It's something I already do. It's just part of what it is. Because I know for me, if I have to rely on my willpower, there are so many things that happen throughout the day that I have to make decisions on, right? I'm mom to 5 kids. I've got 50 something animals and my, barnyard out here. I run multiple short-term, vacation properties now. And, I'm constantly bombarded with questions from potential guests or current guests or whatever. And there's constantly something happening with one of the animals at the farm that's part of just having a farm. I've currently got baby squirrels back here in a cage behind me that we found at the new home that we purchased here on the farm. And I'm bottle feeding baby squirrels, right? Like, I mean, who would have thought that? But these are the constant things that are happening in my life and in your life. It may be different things. Maybe you're not feeding baby squirrels, but you may have other things that are constantly coming at us, and they constantly need us to make decisions and to decide how we're going to handle things and whatever. And that chips away at that willpower. So if you know kind of all the things that you're already going to do, the things that are already set in stone for you, the things that you need to do to get through your day, when these things come at you and you're constantly making these decisions and you get overwhelmed, because I know I do, those are the days that I want to sit down in front of a show at the end of the day with a pint of Ben and Jerry's, because I'm like, I have no willpower left, right? I'm shot. I can't handle it. I have no willpower. I'm just exhausted. And I just can't resist it. Like there's just no resistance left. So though that is it's just a point that I wanted to make to you guys, to know that all of those little things that you do throughout the day, that is what's going to affect your willpower. It's not something that you can muscle through, or the more that you punish yourself or deny yourself things, that's somehow going to make your willpower stronger. It doesn't. In the end, it just makes you feel like you punish yourself and deny yourself all the time. And then that never leads to a good outcome, right? That's always going to end up leading to the opposite. That's going to end up leading to you going down the road of like I just said, like you're overwhelmed and frustrated. And that's when you start saying things like, this just isn't worth it. And I'm not going to be able to do this forever. And this is impossible. And all of those things that we tell each other and that other people tell us, and that keeps us from being able to do this lifestyle. So whether or not you're trying to be in ketosis, or you're just trying to be low carb, keep the insulin low, kind of keep those chronic diseases and inflammation at bay, whatever it is that you're trying to do, willpower can be your friend. And you just need to kind of learn how to use that and massage that and make it work for you rather than against you. All right, guys, that's all I have for this week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I will have some interviews probably. I have some interviews, but I probably will have an interview for you next week, since I've done 2 in a row of these. Thank you guys so much for listening and being a part of this podcast, and just everything that I'm doing here through 100 episodes. Like, this is amazing. I can't believe this is 100 episodes. Gosh, in some respects, it just feels like I started this podcast yesterday. And I really, really appreciate all the messages that I get from you guys, thanking me for the podcast. It just means a lot. All right, guys, thank you so much. Talk next week. Bye.